There is a lot to SQL. Then I will be teaching you here because I can't cover everything in like 45 minutes. And I also want to leave time for questions and answers. The session is going to be 30 minutes and then leave 15 minutes for questions and answers. I assume by now you have connected your GA4 to BigQuery. If you haven't connected GA4 to BigQuery, send me a note and I'll point you to a free lesson. Or if you go in my live session recording, you'll find them there. But don't worry, you don't have to sign up for that. I don't want to make anybody sign up for something they don't want. So I'll send you a free link of my YouTube channel where I have gone through this process where I show you how you can connect GA4 to BigQuery. It's few simple steps. Once you connect your GA4 to BigQuery, the data will start to show up in BigQuery. Now, what is BigQuery and what is SQL? We'll talk about that from a beginner standpoint. Every data is stored somewhere, right? Some in Excel sheets, some in databases, some in maybe sitting in some CSV files, Google Sheets, etc. BigQuery is a database. In technical terms, it's data warehouse. There is a difference between data warehouse and a database. Not going to go through that, but consider this. It's a database which stores all the data. So when you have GA4 collects your data, it can send the raw feed over to BigQuery. And then BigQuery is a database provider or database service, provide tool, whatever you want to call it, platform by Google. So Microsoft provides its own, which is called SQL Server, and now Azure SQL, I think. And then you have the one from Google, BigQuery. There are other data warehouse database solutions as well. But we will be dealing with BigQuery. Why? Because it's free. It's in cloud, it's free. So you can go in, create an account today, and you won't be charged anything for it. So I highly encourage those who want to learn, and everybody should learn. Since you are here, that means you have a desire to learn. Everybody should be learning SQL. Or SQL is SQL, which is the programming language to interact with the databases. So if I want to use data from database, I will use a programming language called SQL or SQL. So it stands for Structured Query Language. This language has been there for years, like ever since I started working in this field. It's been there, and it is one programming language that's much easier to learn than any others, and it opens up several doors. It's not just digital analytics. Digital analysts are late to the party because they just started using SQL. However, all the other analysts generally use SQL for their data processing. I started doing digital or web analytics using SQL. We used to actually put the data in the database. Back then, we didn't have any tools like Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, etc. All we did is data in the database, and then we created reports on top of that. There were no Looker Studio reports, but there were many other tools. So that's what you can do with SQL. You can do all sorts of processing in the database and make your data actionable. I'll be covering all those in other sessions, like how you take this data and make it actionable. But for now, I'm going to focus on SQL fundamentals. And if you have any questions or do not understand anything, feel free to put in the chat. If I see a question that's relevant to the topic that I'm currently discussing, then come back and answer that question. I want to make sure when you walk away from here, you are comfortable using SQL. So step one, connect your GA4 to BigQuery. I'll send you the video if you need it. Once the data starts to flow in, you will see something like this in your BigQuery project. So in BigQuery, you have a project. Underneath that project, you have a data set. And underneath that data set, you have individual tables. So those who are completely unaware of databases, think of it as your project folder. Under that, you have an Excel file or Google Sheet. And under Google Sheet, you have a sheet. A sheet that contains. So you have a sheet for customers, you have a sheet for email stats, you have a sheet for events, etc. Now, when you are starting out with GA4 BigQuery, you will only see possibly 4 tables. Events underscore with a number, events intraday with a number, pseudo user with a number, and user with a number. Possibly. You might only see 1 or 2 of these, or you might see all 4, depending on how you are integrating GA4 with BigQuery and how you have implemented GA4. Keep in mind the SQL or the SQL that I'm going to be teaching you, you can also use that for any other databases as well with minor tweaks. So let's start with events table. So let's say you want to browse and look at the data and manipulate the data within events table. That'll be the table that you will use the most. So if I click on events table, it opens up a table schema that tells you what are the columns or fields in that table, what is the type of that data, and other information. So type means string is just characters, integer is a number, etc. There is also called record, which contains event parameters. So if you expand that, you'll see there is a key and a value. That's your event parameter name, and that's the value that's contained within that event parameter. Clicking on preview shows you the preview of that data. Now, preview is hard to just go browse through if you have multiple records. In order to manipulate, look at this data, aggregate this data, you'll use SQL. So the best way to get started is right click here and click on query. That opens up the format where you can write your query. So I'm going to go and remove this for now. This is your basic syntax for query. Select is a SQL command that's used to select the data. Then you pass in the names of the columns, or you can simply say star. Star means give me every column. So select star, and then from, then you provide the table name. Very much English-like language. I want to select something from something. And that's it. That's all you need. This is the command. Select command is the most common used command. So when I click on run, now it'll select all the records that are there in that table. So each table in BigQuery, this is a little different from other SQL databases, sorry. Each table is a fully qualified name. So you got the project name, right here is your project name. Then you have the data set name, and then you have a table name. Each BigQuery, if you have multiple GA4 properties, each property will create its own data set. This number right here is your GA4 property ID, not the stream ID, GA4 property ID. So you create your project, you have a table, and then you got that table that you want to select it from. So data set and then table name. So that's how you select. But now this is too much data, which I could have also done by browsing. Let's say I want to limit this and only look at top 10 records. So I will type in limit 10. Now it'll only give me 10 records out of all these records. So if I'm just trying to browse through and see, I don't want to deal with like thousands of records. Now you can see right here, it shows you 1 of 10 of 10. So if you scroll down, you can see all 10 records. That's it. So that's how you write SQL. And this is the statement that if you understand, which is easy to understand, then you can pretty much play with the data. Now, let's say if I only want to look at the event names, instead of select star, I would do a column name. So I'll look at the column names. If you remember that schema also gives you that column name. I think it's already here somewhere. Yeah, so where did it go? Event. Yeah, so that's your schema. This is where you can look at Become familiar. If you want to learn BigQuery, become familiar with this schema. So you should know where everything is stored. You have event date, event timestamp, name, etc. I'm not going to go into detail again here because that's covered in a different session where I go through the entire schema and show you. Well, it's in my BigQuery course as well as in another video I've gone through where I show you each data point where it's contained and how your BigQuery, how your GA4 data is translated into these columns. So becoming familiar with data structure is the step one for becoming successful with SQL. So now instead of select star, I will select event name from this table and run it. And now I can see top 10 events, first visit, session start, page view, etc. So now I've narrowed it down to only those columns that column that I care about. I can add more information here. So let's say I also want to select user pseudo ID. So not only event name, but I want to check event name and I want to check the ID of the user that performed that event. Very powerful when you're dealing with marketing. You want to know, hey, we have scroll, or let's say first visit, which users have visited our site for the first time. You might want to look at first visit and the user ID. I'm using pseudo user ID here, but you can also use a known user ID, which will be more valuable. So when I run this now, you can see that event name and there will be a user ID attached to it. So if I want to look at entire thing, I will just remove the limit. Then I know each user what they did on my site. However, this might not be useful enough because you might want to focus on only certain events, like I said, first visit. So let's say my question is, give me all the user IDs, in this case, pseudo user ID. But there is also a user ID column in here that you can also use. But for that, you have to set up user ID tracking in GA4. And if you don't know that, again, I have the content for that as well. But let's say I want to only look at first visits. I want to know, give me all the user IDs for people who came who came to my site for the very first time. For that, you use a where clause. And where clause says it's like a filter where event name, because that's the column, is equal to first visit. Now, when I run it, it'll give me all the user IDs for that first visit event. 196 people on that date, because it's by date, 610. 196 people on 10th, which is 2 days ago, came to the site. This was their first visit. So that's how you can start to play with this data. Now, let's say I want to look at right here, it says 196, right? And let's say I want to also look at not only their first visit, but also and event name also had certain other condition. Maybe there was another event name that I wanted to check. Let's say page view, right? So not only it was their first visit, but also they did a page view on my site. It can be any event. You can say they downloaded a white paper, they filled a contact us form, they purchased something, anything you can do. You can combine conditions in your where clause. So if I go ahead and run it, now I can see all the users who had an event name, first visit, and event name. Oh, sorry, not event name. Um, my mistake here. If this is a little complicated, so I made a mistake here, because if you want to do this, you will first find these users, and then you will go in and type in another one. Sorry, select all these users who had a first visit. So we're going to find out, rather than event name, let's say we start here and say all these users who did a first visit, give me their IDs. So now you got a list of IDs who did their first visit. Now I want to find out all the users who did first visit also did an event called page view. So then you do select star, and I'm going to do star, copy this, where event name is equal to page view, and user ID in this. So I'm joining two conditions here. One I'm saying is give me all the user IDs, and then now give me all those out of those users ID, give me everything where the event name is page view. So user ID has to exist and it has to be their first visit. When you run this query, now you'll get a list of all those people who had a first visit and also did a page view. This is one of the most common scenarios you'll run into it, because the way data is structured in BigQuery, every event has its separate row. And when every event has a separate row, you can only select one event at a time. You cannot have multiple events in your AND condition. Does this make sense? I know I kind of went through this one in a different direction, but I want to make sure this is clear to everybody. Those who are new, particularly from those. So type in yes, it makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, I'll go through that again. Yes. Okay, good. So yeah, so where we have is when you're trying to limit the data, you will use, and I'm going to go back here. You will either use where, and then you can use in clause. Oh, sorry, you can use and clause to aggregate the condition. And for those conditions, you can put in either a separate column. So let's say if I want to look at first visit, but only from, I'm going to scroll here so you guys can see it, and only from, let's see which one I want to find. Let's say this one. Traffic source is organic, and traffic source dot source, oh, sorry, it's medium, is equal to organic, and run it. And here you can see 146 of those first visit came from traffic source of organic. So you can combine conditions here with and, or you can also use or condition. So let's say if I want to do either, oh, sorry, either it was their first visit or traffic was organic. So in this case, I'm saying, give me all the users who were either the first visit or their traffic was there, or their traffic medium was organic. So now when you run it, whenever there is an organic traffic, even if it's even if it's not their first visit, they'll start to show up. As you can see, now we have 1,923 records. So here I can go and also add event name to see which events they did. So either they are first visit, or in this case, this user came from organic source. So you can combine multiple conditions by using and or here. If you want to combine multiple condition where you said this, you can do that as well. And to combine other logical expressions. So this logical expression, I'm not going to go through, but you've done it enough. I assume you know how to combine them. If not, again, I'll be either I can cover this in another session where I can go deeper into where clauses and show you how to construct them. Okay, sometimes what you might also want to do is organize this data by if by certain column. So let's say here event names are all over the place. You see first visit, session start, session start. What if I want to organize them by event name, like sort them out? In order to do that, you will do order by and simply event name. So this will now allow you to order the data by event name. There are two qualifiers that you can use here. Ascending is the default, but you can also use ASC if you want to be specific about it, or descending. And descending allows you to sort the data in a descending order. So here, now the last items or last alphabet is showing up first. So that's order by. Now, and how do we filter the by date range? All right, we'll get to that. How do you filter by date range? I'll see if I can cover that by date range. It's already by date. Each table here is by date. Let's say if you want to look at the entire June, in that case, you'll take these and you put in a star. Now it says, give me all the data for 2025, 06, and entire date range. So if I run this, it'll pull the data from entire date range. There is also a column, and I'm going to go back because this is going to that might take a lot of time. There is also a column called event date. Think anytime you're in confusion whether a column exists or not, make sure to go to the schema. You'll see everything. There is event date, there is event timestamp. This is the timestamp when the data was logged by GA4 and sent here. It's not the timestamp when the event occurred. It's when it batches and sends to BigQuery. That's what this is. Okay, so go back and now, actually, let's do it. It's only 11 days, so I can do this. And yeah, let's run it. Oh, what did I do here? I think I selected just one line. When you select a line, it tries to run that line. Okay, so here you can see a user ID, Vimeo video on 0608. If I want to sort it by event date, I can do that by saying, give me by event date. And you can see this is 08 before I show you 03, 01, sorry, 03 here, 01, etc. So it's all sorted by date. If you want to filter, you can filter by that date too. You can say where event date greater than equal to greater than, I think it's a number 2025 06 08. Event date. Okay, so it's a string. So that's the difference. If you're using, everybody familiar with strings and numbers, right? If the column is string, you have to use string type of value to provide to it. If the number is an integer, then you will provide a number. So now you run it. Now you can see it'll only give you those events where that event date is greater than 08. There are other ways to filter as well. There is a table suffix, which makes it easier. You can use also between. So between, you can provide two dates, where event date. And I believe you can do between. Let's see if this will work or not. Yeah. So you can just say between this and 09. So between 7 and 9. And that includes both the end timeframes as well, I think. Let's see. Let's sort it out. Order by event date. Yeah, so it includes both 07 and 09. So the last one you will see is going to be 09. If I do by descending, ascending is the default. Yeah, so 09. Here you can see you can filter them by dates. There are several ways to filter by date, but this is one of the ways that you can do. However, there is also table suffix, which is again a little complicated to understand, so I'm not going to go through that right now. So that's one thing you'll do. You're looking through your data, you're trying to filter out the data, and you're trying to narrow down by date ranges, by the event that you want to look at. Let's say if you have a download or conversion event or something else. Maybe in this scenario, if you can look at I'm passing an audience whenever an audience is added to my audience group, I'm passing an event so I can look at, okay, give me all the high value leads. Once I have the list, then I can do email marketing to them if I have a proper user ID. Then I can tie in with other data sources. As you can see in my data structure here, I have customers information. I can take that ID and tie it to my customer. So I know Rodrigo is ID 123 because I have the ID from Rodrigo. I can look in GA4 because GA4 won't allow you to send PII data, but you can send an ID. And that ID I can then tie back to my data in BigQuery, which you can't do in GA4. That's where BigQuery comes into play. Now I know Rodrigo did XYZ, right? These events, or he belongs to this audience group. I can take that, send it to my email list, and blast an email to him. Or, which I'm going to show you next week, not 2 weeks from now, you can also use a CDP, and I'm going to show you a free CDP that you can use along with your GA4. I mean, you'll have to set that up as well, where you can personalize their experience. So let's say Rodrigo comes back to my site and is looking at the page, and all of a sudden the page shows, hey, Rodrigo, here's a special for you. Why? Because I can collect this data and then make it, activate it. That's the whole point that you're trying to do. Most of the people are stuck in GA4 just reporting, report, report, report. There's no point in reporting if you're not going to be taking any action. Maybe there is little value, to stroke the ego. Hey, look, we got X number of visits and X number of conversions. I see a lot of conversation where people are still trying to sort, like, not set here, do this, do that. If you're using for GA4 for a while, time to move on. Try to see how it can add value to your business. And this is how you can start to add value to your business. You can go dig deeper. I'm scratching the surface so everybody knows the SQL syntax. Now, I'm going to give you some aggregation SQL. This should give you a good idea how to pull the data. It doesn't tell you how to pull the event parameters yet. And again, that is a little complicated, covered in another video where I go through this completely. But first, understand these things. Then event parameters will start to make sense. You cannot use a where clause for event parameters simply by doing this. So let's say if I have an event parameter, I cannot. So let me go browse the data again. Here, I'm going to actually just browse. Let's do this here. So remove the where condition. And I'm going to do star because I want to select everything. And I'm going to limit to 1. So we can look at one record. Okay, so we have one record here. Why I do one record? Because I want to just look at what kind of event parameters are coming. You can also do by event name, and you can say, let me see what parameters are coming for which event. So generate lead is sending these parameters. As you'll notice, it's only one record. but there are records within records. Those are event parameters. Why Google has done this way beats me, because this is a very complicated way of how traditional databases or other databases do. However, maybe they had a logic, maybe they had this new feature they wanted to test out, and GA4 was guinea pig. It is little complicated to use this in your query. Little is not the right word. It's actually very complicated. Even sometimes when I'm writing SQL, I get confused. I'm like, okay, did we do this or not? The way to play with this is to use a syntax called unnest. It's not easy to understand. If you're a beginner, if you're playing with it, I won't recommend you go through that right now. Just understands the basics. Like I said, select, play with and conditions, play with in condition, and that's how you can find out, get your hands dirty with SQL and play with it. This right here are all the event parameters. So I cannot go and say, give me where page title is equal to thank you. It won't work. So if I try to do that and go in here and say where event param, maybe it's dot key, right, is equal to page title, then what do I do? Page title and event params value. That's not going to work. It's going to give you error because it doesn't recognize. So for that, you will have to use unnest. So I'm not going to go through unnest, but stay with me. You'll learn about unnest, or go sign up for the course, or even my live session might have it in there. Okay. So now I got all the event names, but what I want to know is how many total for each event type. I don't want to, actually, let me step back here. I'm going to do, just tell me, this gives me all there are 2,767 events happened that day on my data. Instead of looking at the entire list, I just want to know, give me a list of unique events. So I just want to know distinctly how many events are there, how many events we are tracking. In GA4, you'll go to events tab and you can see that. But if you want to do that in BigQuery, you'll say distinct event name and then run this query. This distinct now gives you the distinct list. There are 28 events that we are tracking. I'm not using any columns. If I add another column to it, then the distinct happens across those columns. This is just like Excel aggregation. Every time you're thinking about playing with databases, think about Excel, Google Sheets, etc. That's how you're aggregating. So distinct event names gives me the distinct account of each, the distinct list of events. And then I can sort them by event name. Now let's say I want to know, hey, I had 2,700 events but total happened on my site on that day, and we are only tracking 28 events. So approximately, maybe it's 1,000 people came, right? Approximately, if everybody only did one event. So there are less than 1,000 people came. But let's now say we want to find out how many events of each type are there. In that case, you will do event name, and then you will use something called count. And then count is simply this. Then it's complaining about, you'll see there is an error. It says, hey, I can't do this because you haven't given me the full syntax. So what you do here is you type in group by event name. This is kind of lame because I'm only using one event, one column, and I'm saying give me the count, but it wants me to specify how do you want it to roll up by. So I want it to roll up by event name. So now let's go ahead and run it. And here you can see first visit 196. That's what we looked at when we were doing for our first query. 325 session starts happen. That means 325 visits. Page views were 358, etc. So you can see the count of each event. This is what you will get in your event list. However, let's say if I want to also look at event name by traffic source. So let's say traffic, I'm going to remove this here, traffic source dot medium. I want to aggregate by that, and then I do count, and I have to again do the traffic source dot medium. Now when I run this query, I can see each event by traffic source and how many came. So 100 organically, I got 146 first visits, 231 session starts were organic. And similarly, you can say page views, referral generated 21 page views, etc. So I can add more columns to it to get my aggregation. Now, if I want to know by city, I can also put a geo in here. So I'll know first visit from organic, from this city, how many did I get? So here now, your business questions are the drivers. So first step is to step back and ask business questions, or think about business questions. What is the question that I'm trying to answer? There are few ways, and a few ways we conduct analysis. One is what I call reactive analysis, and one is proactive analysis. Reactive analysis is when you react to something. Hey, our organic traffic is down. What happened? Can you look at what happened? Our events are not logging. That's reactive. Proactive is when you have time, you proactively go find segments. You find information that will help you drive the outcome that you want. I want more conversions. All right, I have time. There is Father's Day coming, right? I'm going to go look at past Father's Day's data if I have it. And I'll start to find out what kind of offers, what kind of products people bought last year. Maybe that tells me if I'm selling shirts all the time and I can put shirts in front of people. Hey, it's Father's Day. We sold a lot of shirts. And particularly, we sold this type of shirt. And I looked at past year, past year, past year. Every time we see this pattern, right? That's what data is telling me. Now let's go ahead, put these types of shirt. Should we put it 2 days before, 5 days before, a month before? You can look at the data. When did they started to peak? A lot of this can be done in GA4, but when you have BigQuery, you can process a lot of data by just making minor tweaks. You don't have to go drag and drop, create new explore, create this, create that. All right, guys. So that's it. And I'll see you in the next live session.